Yeah, grab a seat. Oh, good to be with you guys. Happy Father's Day, dads, grandfathers. It's the day we celebrate guys. I've had several people ask me already today, you weren't limping in here like we expected and were hoping for. And I'm like, wow, you were actually listening, paid attention to those stories last week. No, the weather on the mountain was terrible yesterday. I didn't want to get my hair messed up, so we decided to postpone the hike around the mountain to another day. So on another Sunday, when you see me wheeled up here in a wheelchair, you'll know. But happy Father's Day. This is the day that we would typically take an opportunity to talk to guys. So when folks want to get married, I always say we're going to sit down, we're going to talk 3 or 4 sessions, because more than planning out your wedding, let's talk about your marriage. And the reason we do some pre-marriage counseling is not so that we can give someone a grade or a pass-fail or make any prediction for success for their marriage, but I always say, hey, let's talk about some things that maybe you don't even realize you should be talking about now, and if you can talk about some things now, maybe it'll save you some fights and arguments in the future. And one of those conversations always is about roles. And so we have conversations like, okay, so whose role will it be to kind of oversee the finances, and whose role will it be to who's going to do the laundry, and who's going to do the dishes, and who's going to grocery shop and meal plan, and who's going to take care of the house and the car and the auto. And you know, I always love it when couples are like, we work together so well. We have one of our strengths is communication, and we're both flexible. Nobody needs to be in charge of the laundry or the dishes. We're just going to do the laundry and the dishes together, and we just work so well together. And I'm like, how about we just make an appointment right now for about 9 months from now? How does October 7th, Friday at 3 o'clock sound? Because you're going to need it, right? I can already tell if you don't have some conversations, because you think that you're going to just share and share alike until one day when he comes home and he's tired and he's worn out and there's a pile of dishes and she is too, and you're both looking at each other like, I did them last night, we didn't share, it's just, you got to talk about these things, right? And one of the reasons we have to talk about these is because, well, it's this worn out phrase, right, that times have changed. See, maybe for our parents' or grandparents' generation, maybe these conversations didn't have to happen, though they probably should have happened, because roles were pretty much just kind of defined by gender, and however you were born, whatever gender you were born with, that was your role, and everybody knew what your job was going to be, whether you were good at it or not, whether you enjoyed it or not. Men had a job, women had a job. When you got married, you just did what your grandparents did, their parents did. That was just kind of assigned to you, and they were very traditional, very laid out. Everybody knew what their job was. And then about a generation ago, probably because that really wasn't working for a lot of folks, that everything was kind of thrown into an upheaval, and now we're at the place where we're like, there are no kind of like assigned roles, and we have to communicate with each other, we have to be flexible with each other, and we have to figure out within every relationship who is going to do what and how is it that we're going to work together. I'd suggest that the new system is probably better, but it's harder. Maybe the older system, well, maybe it was easier. Probably just easier for the men, though, because it usually turned out like this. Like, the men decided what was going to be done, and then the women had to do all the work in actually executing all of it. That's usually how we kind of hear some of those stories going. I remember a conversation I had with one of the saints of the church, and she said, well, you know, it just worked really well for us. He was a farmer, and it was his job to take care of the farm, and it was my job to take care of the farmer. Worked out pretty well for them. Nobody really laughed at that one. Okay, no, that was like it worked out well for them. Everybody, but that's just kind of not really how it works anymore, right? And what has resulted then, guys, since we're not really great with communication, we're not really great with patience, we're not really great in kind of negotiating all of this, is a lot of guys, we've just kind of abdicated any leadership. Like that old way of like, this is how it is, I'm the man, I'm in charge, this is the way it's going to be, that's kind of gone, doesn't really work anymore, and as a result, we don't really know what to do, so we just said, I'm just not doing anything. And we know that doesn't work at all, either. And what we want is some kind of a partnership, but let's be honest, a lot of times we've got husbands and wives going kind of going the same direction, walking parallel paths, and because we don't know who is supposed to be taking care of whom or taking care of what, we just kind of take care of ourselves. And if you need some help, let me know. But like, I'm here taking care of myself, doing my thing. You're here taking care of yourself, doing your thing. We'll maybe work together for the kids' sake sometimes, but that's about the best that we can do. And I want to suggest today, it's not the best we can do. But we're going to need some help with it. I want to suggest too, guys, because it's Father's Day, we're going to talk to guys today. I want to suggest too that often what comes natural, and that is, we get up, we go to work, we work really hard, and then we come home. Well, okay, I'll just speak for myself, okay? What I want to do is get up, go to work, be at work, give myself to my work really hard, come home, and sit, and do nothing else. Maybe mow the lawn, maybe take care of some house stuff, but that's it. That's what I want to do. That's what I like to do. That's what feels good. That's what kind of comes naturally, unfortunately. That doesn't work either. So we're going to need some help with this. Here's what I'd like to do today. Well, it's what we do. We go to the Bible and we say, what does God have to say about this that we can learn from? And we're going to look at the book of Proverbs. If you want to follow along in your Bibles, we're in the book of Proverbs at the very end of it, chapter 31. Now, here's what we know about the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is like a collection of wisdom sayings. A lot of them are just kind of like wise two-liners that would be really kind of like wisdom. It's just practical daily wisdom. It's interesting that God is not mentioned as much as he's mentioned in the rest of the Bible. But in the first chapter, which is the introduction of wisdom, it kind of says like there's a wise way to live life, there's a foolish way to live life. There are men and women of wisdom, and there are men and women of foolishness. And it says early on, like the foolish way of life, the fool says in their heart there is no God. And so it establishes early on, like wisdom comes from God. We got to have wisdom we got to have God in order to have wisdom. We also find in the book of Proverbs there's not a lot of reference to God's laws and God's rules, which is kind of the rest of the Old Testament. But what we find is like, here's what it looks like to believe in God, trust in God, to know his laws, and to live them in the daily, practical outworkings of life. At home, in the marketplace, relationships with friends, with money, emotions. And we see the wisdom of God lived out. So here we go, Proverbs chapter 31. Most of the book of Proverbs, traditionally we believed, is like a collection of wise sayings from Solomon, who is David's son. He was the king over Israel, and when he was king, Israel was the largest and the richest and most well-known it would probably ever be. And he was known for wisdom, and that leaders from the world would come to him seeking his wisdom. The book of Proverbs is a collection of wisdom sayings, either written by Solomon and or collected by Solomon. Chapter 31, here we go, starting in verse 1. The sayings of King Lemuel, an inspired utterance his mother taught him. Scholars believe that King Lemuel here is a reference to King Solomon. And so here's what we see in chapter 31, an inspired utterance from his mother. So here's little young Solomon. His mom pulls him up on her knee, reads to him at night when he's going to bed, talks to him when he's, taking chariot rides back and forth to school when he's a teenager and all that, driving him to baseball practice and like, hey, let's talk about wisdom here. And there's just, here we have a mother who knows her son will be king. She cares about him, and she wants to train him in wisdom, to know how to be a good and godly man in every situation in life. Here's what she says. Look, verse 2. Listen, my son. Listen, son of my womb. Listen, my son, the answer to my prayers. When mama says listen 3 times, she's already said it 2 times too many. So you pay attention, right? Moving right on. Listen, pay attention. I've been praying for you. You're my answer to my prayers. I'm praying for you. She begins it here, verse 3. Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. In other words, I know you're going to be tempted. You're going to see someone, she's going to be pretty. She's going to catch your eye. Don't chase after women. They'll ruin you. Not all of them. Don't worry. Don't just you get what I'm saying though. She goes on and then she says, alcohol. Alcohol is not meant for kings and leaders. It will ruin you. She goes on in the next verse and then she says, speak up for the poor. Speak up for the needy. Seek justice for those who typically are overlooked and don't have the means or the funds to get justice for themselves. You're a leader. You're going to be the king. These are some wise sayings to make sure that you lead well. And then in verse 10, she says, now, let's talk about your future wife. A wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. If you're going to chase after someone, find a girl that is described by this. Chase after her, a wife of noble character. And then she goes on. She says, look, I've prayed for you, son. You're the answer to my prayers. And I'm praying that God will lead you to be that person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And I want you to listen for a description of who to look for. So let me just read through the rest of this. It gets kind of long, and so maybe rather than kind of reading along with me, maybe you just close your eyes and just imagine these kind of little pictures that she gives here of what it looks like, what a wife of noble character looks like. Let me just read it to you. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works it with eager hands. She's like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments, and she sells them. She supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. And I quote, "Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all." Charm is deceptive. Beauty is fleeting. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gates. Wow. Whew. That's pretty amazing. I mean, you just look at the description here. She's providing for her family. She's a profitable property developer. She makes her clothes. She opens her house to the poor and the needy around her. She has a great attitude about it. She's able to laugh, and she has a great personality. I mean, she has a great relationship with her children. This is amazing. And it is true that this passage has inspired generations of women. In 1992, a woman by the name of Lisa, she started a ministry of encouragement to women. She started with a few volunteers sending out a monthly newsletter from her garage. It caught on, subscribers grew, it turned into a magazine, it turned into a teaching ministry and a traveling ministry, and here we are now, a couple of decades later, and Lisa Turkhurst leads a large international ministry focusing on teaching and encouraging women to follow Jesus, trust Jesus, and to live their full potential in Jesus. What's the name of her ministry? She named it Proverbs 31 Ministries, inspired by this vision here in Proverbs 31. Inspired by this vision of this wife of noble character who's up while it's still dark, and she's buying fields and weaving clothes by lamplight while the end of the day. What's interesting, though, is if you do a little Google search on Proverbs 31, you know what you find? A whole lot of blogs of honest women saying, "This is exhausting. I've tried it, and I'm worn out trying." And a whole lot of other blogs of women saying, "This is inspiring." And somewhere here, there's this tension between inspiring and exhausting. So today is Father's Day. We celebrate fathers. And so on Father's Day, we typically take an opportunity to speak to men. Whether you're a father or a grandfather, we want to talk about how to be a leader and an influencer. Why? Because for the young men coming up behind us, we want them to be leaders and influencers, and we know that they need models of healthy, godly men who can lead the way in showing them how to be healthy, good, godly influencers and leaders. You see, too often when we have talked about leadership, we have imagined kind of that dominant, forceful, position-oriented, I'm the leader and I say so, I make the decisions, I. It's an unfortunate reality. A couple decades ago, a ministry oriented towards men, Promise Keepers, had men's retreats, men's gatherings in sports arenas across the United States. I've been to a couple of the events. I know many of you guys have been to a couple of events, and they were powerful. They were inspiring, and so amazing to see a football stadium filled with 80,000 men singing and worshiping together. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And a lot of the themes are encouraging men to be good and godly leaders at home and at work and everywhere they go. The unfortunate reality, though, is that the Christian counselors in the cities knew that about 6 to 9 months after a Promise Keepers event, they would be busy counseling families with an increase in domestic violence. Now, that's not Promise Keepers' fault. They actively worked so that wouldn't happen. They never wanted to happen. They had follow-up small groups and Bible studies for men to not have that happen. But it illustrates that we guys, we really want to be good leaders, but we just don't know how. And sometimes those examples of the strong, domineering, forceful, that's all we know of leadership, and that doesn't work at home. So here's what I want us to think today. Let's take a different angle at it. Looking at Proverbs 31, that we can all be inspired by this, but here's what I want to ask. Who is the husband of the wife of noble character? Who is lucky enough to be her husband? Well, not just lucky enough. If you're married to her, there's some responsibility there. And it's great to say, oh yeah, that's kind of a wife of noble character who can find, yeah, that's awesome, I want to find one of those. But when you find one of those, are you and I, for those of us who have found one of those, are we the husbands that they need us to be so that they can live this vision that inspires them as well and not live by constant exhaustion? If your daughter is going to be inspired by this vision in Proverbs 31, what kind of a husband will she need? I'll tell you who she won't need: someone who's jealous of her success or feels threatened by her success. That the question we're going to ask today, so if your wife, or if you're not married, your future wife, will be inspired by this vision, what kind of a husband does she need you to be? Let's talk about this today. And the question we're asking really is, how do I lead at home? So as I kind of looked through this text this week, read through it, prayed over it, and gotten some opinions and insight and suggestion, not just from a bunch of guys, because, well, we just kind of would read it one way. I actually asked some good, godly women of noble character, what they thought about that and how they were going to hear from them in a little bit. But here's what we see, just reading from it straight. What do we see here? Number one, let me offer you 6 suggestions today, kind of bullet points. Maybe you'll write these down. Maybe you'll take a screenshot of the screen if you see something that's helpful to you. And what I want you to do is to think about the one that really gets you today. So here we go. How do I lead at home? The first one I want to suggest comes straight from here. Tell her that you believe in her. Look at how it starts off in verse 11. Her husband has full confidence in her, and therefore lacks nothing of value. What does it look like to say, I believe in you, to have full confidence? In other words, let me ask it this way. Do you know what she's good at? Do you know her strengths? And can you see her strengths in action? And do you not only know her strengths, but let her know how you see those strengths playing out in day to day as she uses those strengths and as she exhibits those strengths? Do you know what she's good at? And guys, if you don't know what your wife is good at, it's time to start paying attention. It's time to start watching. Or you just kind of ask her friends and a few others like, okay, tell me her strengths because I'm trying to understand her better and love her better. Find out what she's good at. Notice what she's good at. And then, I know this is hard because we have like 10 words a day. That's kind of our daily, number of words that we like to say. Everything else, it just goes through the mind, but we don't say it. We got to give some of those to our wives. And then we say it. Tell her. Because here's what the research would say. That our wives struggle with insecurity and self-doubt. And we don't have to be surprised at that because, guys, we know when we're honest, we also struggle with insecurity and self-doubt, even in the areas we know we're good at. If we understand how we still struggle with it, then it only makes sense that our wives would struggle with it as well. And if somebody that we know struggles with insecurity and self-doubt, it is up to us, their friends, and especially if our wives struggle, it's up to us, their husbands, to say, I believe in you. When you do this, you're good at it, and you're really good at it, and keep on doing it because you're so good at it. How about the next one here? Ask, how can I help? You see what I see described here is she's up before the sun rises, working, all whatever needs to be done, works through the day, and even when after the sun has set and it's still dark, she's weaving clothes by lamplight at the end of the day. In other words, she's not coming home from work, wherever work is, whatever it is, and just sitting and just doing nothing the rest of the day thinking that her job is done. She's continuing to work, and so what it looks like for us is to say, how can I help? I see that you're busy. I see that you're working really hard. I appreciate it. How can I help? And then whatever she asks for help, we just do it. Even if we're terrible at it, even if we don't like it, even if it's dusting. Oh, man. But we do it, right? We say, how can I help? And then we do it. How about the next one here? Encourage her. Look at verse 16. She considers a field and she buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She's a successful investor, a successful property developer. But you know what? Every investor and property developer, they see a field, they wonder if they're going to buy it, and they think, okay, well, can I afford it? Is it going to be profitable? Is it going to work out? I got to take a risk, and they think through kind of the risk and what everybody who's considering taking a risk, what every husband or wife needs, what your wife needs as she's considering taking a risk, striking out and doing something that she feels like she's supposed to do, is someone to say, do it, take the risk. Oh yeah, but what if it fails? And you say, you know what? It's okay if it fails, but if it fails, we're going to fail together, and we're going to be in it together, and we're going to rebuild it together because we're here together, we're in it together. And it's okay to fail because we're just going to be here together. I believe in you. I support you. I'm not going anywhere. Encourage her in the things that she feels like she is called to do, needs to do, is going to do. How about the next one? Discipline the kids. Look at verse 28. Her children arise and call her blessed. Obviously, they never had middle schoolers, right? Or maybe arise means like arise from the table. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not arise from bed in the morning. Maybe it's like her children arise from the table and call her blessed, because we know everybody, including us husbands, we always say, thank you, that was a wonderful meal. Appreciate all the hard work you did, thinking, planning, preparing, cooking. Just thank you so much. Let's do the dishes while you rest, because we all do that, right? Especially the kids. No, not so much? Yeah. Anna does. Anna does that, right? Yes. No. Look at this. Her children arise and call her blessed. Like, maybe. But not when it's like time for school and the bus is on the way and we're going to be late. And I've already said it's time to get up. It's time to get up 38 times. They're still not up, and it's going to be late, and we've splashed water on your face. We've pulled the covers. We're like dragged out of bed foot first, and they fell on the floor. And the kids get up and say, oh, Mom, I'm so blessed to have you as my mom. No, like decades later, they say, Mom, we're so blessed to have you. Thanks for yanking us out of bed feet first. It got us going when we needed it. What Mom needs at that point is some help. What your wife needs at that point is some help disciplining the kids. It's one of the things we heard from some of the ladies who responded. You see, the big question that we're really kind of is asking, and the kind of the summary question that we can ask is really like, what do the women in our lives need from us? What does it mean to lead at home? Well, it's kind of similar to what it means to lead at work. And you know what? When you're at work, the worst managers are those who put obstacles in your way, who make things harder for you, and just get in the way from you doing the things that you want to do, right? The best managers, on the other hand, they remove obstacles. They see where you're going and they pave the way and help you to get there with as easy as it can be, because they want you to thrive and succeed. And today, as we think about a vision for leadership at home, what it means to lead at home is not a vision of demanding and a position that says, I'm the leader. Because what we know is that the best leaders are those who see themselves as servants. And who not only see themselves as servants, but who give their time to serving. And the best leaders are known and remembered, not for their personality, not for their success, but they are known and remembered by the people around them for how well they served. Servant leaders work tirelessly to come alongside the people around them and to give them everything they need to thrive and succeed. Give them everything they need, not always give them everything they want. But servant leaders work to give people everything they need to thrive, to succeed. Guys, what would it look like for you and I to come alongside our wives and say, I'm here to serve? And look for ways to serve. Look for ways that we can pull every obstacle out of their way, pave the way, so that our wives, our daughters-in-law, the women around us can do everything that God has called them to do. So I asked for some of the women on our women's ministry leadership team to look at this passage, tell me what they thought. I asked Erica to take a look at this passage, tell me what you thought, and answer the question from a woman's perspective, reading Proverbs chapter 31. What do you guys need? What do you need from us, husbands? What does the husband of a Proverbs 31 wife look like? Here are the responses I got. Someone said this: she would need her husband to be a leader, fully involved. They'd have to be a team. Someone else said this: she would need her husband to share in all the moments, the hard ones, the sad ones, victorious ones, and the everyday moments. A husband who is joyful to serve alongside and support her dreams and desires. Someone else personalized it and said it like this: I would want my husband to be there beside me, working with me, serving beside me, be it physically or just support, and raising our children together. I would need him to be committed and growing in his faith, whatever stage he's in, and to be present in what we do together. He would support my dreams and lift them up in prayer with me. It would be wonderful for him to listen when listening is needed, help when help is needed, comfort me when things get tough, and to love unselfishly all those around him. I would expect him to make mistakes, as I do, but also be humble in asking for help or forgiveness when needed. He would love me and our family and lift us up in whatever we are doing. Guys, I in no way want to bring shame today, in no way want to bring guilt today, but I want us to hear, and on this Father's Day, to be inspired. Just like so many women have been inspired by Proverbs 31, I want us to be inspired today and to commit ourselves to being the men that we need to be so that the women in our lives can be everything God has called them to be. Two more at the very end of the chapter here. This is this one. They're similar to each other, but a little bit different. Number one, praise her privately. Again, it's time to open our mouths and to say it out loud and to tell her how wonderful she is. Look at verse 28. Her children arise and call her blessed. Sometimes. Look at this next part though. Her husband also, and he praises her. And I quote, many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Verse 30. Here's what you should not say to her. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Now it's true, right? It's true, it's very, very true. But do not, just don't. Just stay with verse 29, you're going to be fine. Verse 30, if you go there, you're going to be dead. And then I got to do your funeral, it's not going to work out too well. If you go to your wife and say, oh, honey, beauty is fleeting, but you fear the Lord, and that is wonderful, that's just not going to go well. She's going to say, what are you trying to say, that my beauty has fled? And then you're going to be like, I ran out of words for the day. And you're going to be in trouble. Yeah, and then we got to like fit you into my calendar. We're going to have to come in and talk, okay? No. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Look what it says in verse 31. It's the next part of it. It's similar but different, and that is praise her publicly. Verse 31, it says, honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her words bring her praise at the city gate. Honor her with public praise. Let her works bring her praise at the city gate. You see, in ancient cultures, the city gate was where things happened. The city gate is where the elders of the city, almost always men, gathered and made the important decisions for the city. It's where judgment happened and justice happened. It happened at the city gate. And he says, at the city gate, the center of city life, you make sure that all those guys know how wonderful your wife is, because a wife of noble character, who can find? Well, it just supports what we already know, right? That good leaders give away attention, credit, and praise. It's the unhealthy leaders who need all the attention on themselves. Okay, what does this look like for us? Because we don't really have city gates. The elders don't really gather at the city gates. What do we do with that? Here's what you do. You go to a city council meeting, because they are like live streamed everywhere, and you get a sign, and you hold it up in the back of the audience that says, my wife is better than your wife, right? The wives in the room, they're like, not so sure about that. Okay, no. Okay, maybe not that. But you figure out a way to praise her privately and to praise her publicly. Think about this. I'm going to leave you with this. What kind of a husband does a Proverbs 31 wife need? We've talked about it today. Look at this last part, verse 23. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. And here we have this beautiful image. The city gate, the center of social and civic life, community. The husband is there, and he's respected. And the husband is there, sharing, encouraging, praising his wife publicly, and all the other elders respect her as well and look up to her as well. And in that community, as a couple, they are loved, appreciated, and respected. And people go to them for wisdom, and younger leaders go to them and watch them and model their lives and their marriages after them as well. Because here's what happens. Her reputation will raise your reputation. And your reputation will raise her status. And you and we all know some couples who've been married decades and decades. And they work together, they love each other, they support each other, and we look up to them. They're the couple at the city gate that's well known, well respected. So, how's God inspired you today? As we've talked about some of these things about what it means to lead at home, I gave you 6 of them. You probably aren't going to be able to give your time to doing all 6, but I bet there's one that God has really highlighted for you. In fact, you heard that one and you just haven't stopped thinking about it. You ignored all the others because that's the one that God's like, that's for you today. That's the one for you, husband, to start putting some time and attention and energy. And God says, I'm going to help you with that, and I'm going to encourage you with that you can do it. Or maybe, guys, it's just time for you to start learning from the other elders at the gate. Maybe you just humbly say today, I want to be that, my wife. I want to be the husband that paves the way so that my wife can be that. But I don't know how. And I struggle with that, and I haven't had really great mentors, and I need to surround myself with the men at the city gate. And so maybe it's time for you to just kind of like make the commitment that, man, whenever they get that men's breakfast started up again, I'm going to be there every single time sitting around a table, and I'm going to find some of the godly leaders, and I'm going to surround myself with them. I'm going to show up bright and early on Tuesday morning for that men's prayer breakfast or the men's prayer time that meets here at the church, and I'm going to surround myself with godly men. I'm going to find a godly man and ask him every question I can think of, because I need to surround myself with elders at the gate who also publicly praises their wives, appreciates their wives, the men that I look up to. So, guys, we want to lead at home. We don't always know how, but God says, I'm going to help you with this. How are you? How am I going to start leading at home in a new way, in a better way? Let's pray. God, would you inspire us and continue to inspire us with your way of leading at home? We want to be the best husbands we can be. We want to be the best fathers we can be. We want to be great models to our children and grandchildren of what it means to be a leader at home. But God, it doesn't come easy. Help us. God, in whichever way you would like to get our attention today, God, our hearts are open, our ears are open. Lead us today, God. We so want to be the men that our wives want us to be. Ladies, today, maybe you feel like none of this has applied to you. Today, I want you to pray. Pray for one of the guys in your life. Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your son, maybe it's a grandson. Somebody in your life. You will pray for him to be that leader that even he wants to be but doesn't know how to be. You pray for him even now. And maybe it is your husband. And when you're tempted to say something, although that's never worked before and it's probably not going to work this time, maybe the better way is to hit your knees in prayer and say, oh, God, I pray for him. God, teach him to lead. God, surround him with other men who will inspire him to lead and lead well at home. God, we pray for the men around us. Jesus, you led so well. You were such a great example of that servant leader who gave your life for us. Jesus, would you continue to inspire each of us today? We want to be the men who pave the way for everybody in our lives to live their full potential in you. God, help us today to do whatever it takes. We're yours. It's in your name we pray these things today. Amen.